Welcome to blamestorming. Blamestorming. In a post-truth world, there's plenty of blame to go around. 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 Join Dave Sirus and Maryssa Smith as they blamestorm about today's hot topics.
Hey guys, welcome to Blamestorming. I'm Maryssa Smith. I've got Dave Sirus with me.
Yes.
I've got Heather Height with me.
Hello.
And I've got Kaytlin Bailey with me.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dave, how was your week?
Good. Who's the announcer on our opening, on our intro?
That would be a fine young gentleman that I purchased a intro from on Fiverr.
We paid for that?
Wonderfully British.
We did.
We know people. We don't have to throw money away on British black people.
It wasn't it was me, and and I liked his voice. So I was gonna go with this guy that did like a Morgan Freeman impersonating voice, but he was too expensive, so I went with the British guy.
All right, I don't want you throwing your money away.
How did you know he was black?
I have ears.
I didn't know he was black.
Yeah, no, I feel like black English people sound like the future.
That is the
I think
future.
they are the future.
That is the future.
Yeah, like it's just whenever I hear it, I feel like it's like, oh, this is what the future is going to sound
Now,
like.
I want to be clear. Maryssa is black. I know you can't tell from her voice.
I can tell because I'm sitting next to her. But
I'd be more uncomfortable saying these things if she wasn't here.
I do feel more comfortable with
I
my
don't
eyes
hear
than my
color,
ears.
David.
I try to remind people every episode up top.
You do remind every episode up top. I've even put my photo on our website, and
We don't know that they saw it.
but we don't.
We need
don't.
people to know.
But why is this such a concern of yours?
Because...
He doesn't want to be accused of racism.
Right. I need you as cover for that constant.
He's using you as a shield, which is frankly pretty racist.
a human
Yeah.
shield.
Yeah.
This is how the left is racist, you guys. They in their attempts of inclusion, they exclude. It's like, oh, you are the only black person in the room, because Dave books it that way.
We were hoping you wouldn't talk. We just wanted you here for the picture. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
we don't- Yeah, it's like, oh my god,
I
this
didn't know you're going to be making decisions and
like
having opinions.
she hired a black voice. She's talking.
I was more upset he was British, but I hadn't heard that before. I wanted
Well,
to.
that wasn't the full song. Like we haven't that was just like the quick intro. You haven't heard the full song yet.
So it gets longer?
Well, that's the intro part is the same. The song is longer.
Okay.
Because we, meaning me, also paid for a song.
Yes. Well, good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
I could have gotten that for free too.
Like
I didn't know we were.
Sounds like you're not really involved in the decision making here.
That's a conscious decision. By
Okay,
me.
all right,
Yes.
well
You're
then-
just here for the picture, Dave.
I show up and I talk.
Okay.
This is Marissa's show.
Well,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell from how strong your opinions were on the choices she's made that you'd put her in a leadership position. Jesus.
he didn't put me in a leader I allowed him to come along.
Well, there you go. Well, then shut your mouth, Dave.
Because I don't know if everyone can hear, but Dave is Jewish. So,
could-
like, you know.
Obviously, they could tell that from my voice.
I don't know, because, like, you don't sound like you're from, like, I don't know, New York.
Poland.
No, or anywhere, like, I don't know.
1930s Poland is what you're thinking of.
I was actually
voice you're
thinking
looking
of, like,
for.
1970s Brooklyn, but, you know, whatever.
That
I
could be
was
anyone.
searching for anti-Semitic things. I was like, swamps, what are we what are we doing? And I was like, for all the Jew violence happening, I don't know enough anti-Semitic things. I was searching for the joke and I couldn't find it.
Well, first of all, Jews in the 1970s sounded like Italians, so you're not going to find
true.
anyone that
That's
way
true.
either.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a big problem we had. They just couldn't stop.
Arthur
I
Fonzarelli.
don't know. I
led
feel
the-
like you're
led the
not
wave.
going to hear, like, a Brooklyn Italian, like, say, like, a Minch or, like, you know.
You won't hear a Brooklyn Jew say it either. Not in the 70s. Andrew Dice Clay is a Brooklyn 70s Jew.
Yes.
That's what we sounded like then. And my whole family went to high school with him, and they all sound like him. But also, Italians do say mensch in Brooklyn, so...
Nobody ever cares that I tell this story, but I live like in the Flatbush area.
Yeah.
And there's a whole movie that the Arthur Fonzarelli character is based on that came from a movie called the Lords of Flatbush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that?
No.
It was like a 50s movie. Like the opening to Grease is an homage to the Lords of Flatbush.
Oh no, I didn't
and
know
the
that.
character Arthur Fons, and he's also a Brooklyn Jew.
Oh, there you go.
Or his character is like, I don't even know if he's originally from Brooklyn. What's his face?
Well, the character
The
is
character
a Brooklyn Italian that they originally wanted a blonde guy to play, and then a tiny Jew named Henry Winkler did such a good job in the audition that they changed the character, kind of like with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, that's Barbara Streisand in that movie that was supposed to be about an Irish chick.
Yentl?
No. That was accurately cast. No, this one's the funny lady, or no, the one where she played
Funny lady.
Dolly. Hello, Dolly.
Hello,
Dolly.
Dolly.
Is it?
Yeah,
It's
Dolly's
the
an
redhead,
Irish woman. Yeah,
Not
Irish.
funny girl. Not funny.
No, funny girl, Jewish, definitely. It's in the song. Hello, Dolly. Dolly's an Irish name. That's the trick.
Oh, that's a person's name?
Yeah, Dolly with the singing and the making people happy and the
I
spending
didn't see
money.
it.
I don't know.
Well, since we're talking so much about the Jews right now, did you guys hear that Putin is now blaming the election meddling on the Jews?
That makes all the
Well,
sense.
Oh, yeah.
What he said was in his, just vamping while talking to Megyn Kelly, he just said, how do we know these were Russians? They could have been Jews or Tatars, which, I feel like
What's it?
Is it a new racial slur?
it's just a thing in Russia, a people in Russia, the Tatar.
Oh.
And it was, I don't see why no one is attacking him for, bringing them out either. I don't think just the Jews should be offended. He made it clear that he doesn't really consider Jews in Russia.
I mean, no one's ever heard of the
Russians.
Tatars, so we're just like, all right, like maybe they make the sauce. I don't know.
I hope you get 7 angry emails from all
All the
7
seven
Tatters.
Tatters,
Yeah,
yeah.
I hope that's what happens.
They're like
By the way, I hope we're saying it wrong.
Tatters? Totters?
Tatars. Yeah.
Oh, it's a new slur. I'm excited.
it's-
Who are these people?
Honestly, if it's Tatars, then go to hell. I'm not saying that.
Too close to centaurs. Wait, no. It's centaur. Never
Centaur.
mind. Centaurs.
Too close to a
don't-
word that doesn't exist.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. Well, I mean, that interview was the idea of like watching someone trying not to get caught for doing something he can't be punished for. So it was sort of like it's like your kids interrogating you about like whether or not you're going to go to Disneyland. You don't want to admit the truth, but at the same time, what the hell are they going to do?
What are they going to do?
And that was what he was doing. He said, how do you know that? I mean, he was just kind of bullshitting her. I mean, he kept saying to be like, well, you don't have a law degree. So yeah, I do. Oh, well, I'm going to say the same thing I was going to say anyway. No, I mean, because Putin, he no longer feels like he lives in a world where there could be consequences. So he'll just
I
say
see
whatever.
how he got there. I follow his logic.
Yeah.
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 Well, he's saying,
Going on too long.
You're saying that someone in Russian government did this. Well, maybe it wasn't a Russian. Maybe it was a Jew because they're nothing.
Maybe it was
They're
a
not-
flat earther. Yeah. Just, ugh.
So yeah, he just, I mean, he's just deflecting to Jews because it's, he knows how to
What a
get the right
hack.
people's attention.
What a hack scapegoat,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
What a hack 1939 scapegoat.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, we've seen this movie.
Yeah, it does feel like we're all trapped in a dystopian nightmare, doesn't it? Is
Yeah.
everyone waking up in a cold sweat?
I feel like we're
Well,
more
the last time I saw you, it was actually election night.
Yeah.
And I was doing an election show at the Creek in the Cave, and you were there.
And blackout, right?
Like, you didn't seem blacked out at the time.
Okay.
Like, yeah, but like, you and I were just like, what the fuck's happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I just remember being like, I'm about to shit my pants. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm totally shitting my pants. And then like some girl tried to fight me in the bathroom. It was quite an interesting
Wait,
night.
what?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So like,
White girl.
yeah. So like,
Well, I mean, yeah.
it's the Creek.
Let's-
What?
So like I was waiting for the bathroom and this girl was in there for like a super long time, and like I knocked on the door and waited and still she didn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
Came, like, went back, had more of my beer, came back to the bathroom, still didn't come out, knocked again. And this is probably, now it's like closer to like 15 minutes. Then finally she like flings open the door and then she's like, are you having a problem? And I'm like, are you having a problem?
Yeah, we're literally all shitting ourselves. This isn't just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there was only one bathroom working at the time.
Yeah,
and it's
'cause it's
just
the
like,
creek.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, lady, like, be a human, do your drugs at home. People need to pee. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, what are you doing?
Or it's the creek. Just do your drugs. Why are you
do them in the
hiding
open.
in the bathroom?
Yeah,
It's the
like
best-
people just literally, because like if like I walked in there and it like smelled like she had blown up the toilet, then I'd be like, all right,
Oh,
she
yeah.
can't eat this food.
Yeah, she
But,
can't
like-
eat this food, or like it's election night, and some of us manifest that differently. I mean, I've shit liquid for like a full week after that. You know, I mean, I
Yeah.
still throw up on Subway. Like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it was
Stomach
just like,
issues aside, do your drugs out in the open. Don't be a monster.
yeah, like people need to use the bathroom. So like then like I come back out and she's like, I think we need to talk, and I'm like, okay, about what? She's like, well, I think that you misunderstood what just happened there, and I think we're having a problem. And I'm like, are we having a problem? And then like this other
You get to decide if it's a problem or not. What are you talking about? I mean, I guess. What part of? You think I misunderstood that you were in the bathroom for too fucking long, and now you're out? This could be over. You could decide for this to be over.
So like I literally just like and like another comic was just like, oh, Maryssa, she wants to fight you, and I was just like, okay, are you trying to fight me right now? And then she's like, and I'm like, just walked away from her, and then she's just like, oh, she's so ignorant, she just walked away from me, and then she's like, you can't walk away from me, and I'm like, oh, really?
So totally
and then
just
I just
did
like, and I literally walked away from her again as she's telling me that
you're
I
part
can't
of the
walk.
53%. That's a
Yeah.
53%er right there.
Yeah, that is a
that bitch.
53%.
It's
Yeah.
a comic, right?
No, she was just like a lay person that was like in the creek.
Which makes her a sociopath.
Yes.
I mean, if she's a non-comic hanging out at the creek on a Tuesday, that
Yeah.
already she's filled with symptoms.
She's just, I don't know. To me, she looked like she was like a substitute teacher or something like that. She gave me that like I'm an education vibe.
Oh no.
Oh man.
You know, like those
Teachers
like,
in bars are the worst people.
Yeah, they really are.
I've never met a teacher in a bar that I was like, oh, I'm so happy you're a teacher. I'm
Yeah,
glad
no,
that
they're
you're teaching children.
monsters. Monsters. It's like this is exactly why, like, you know, you're like ruining the next generation is because you're a monster.
Speaking of ruining the next generation, did you guys catch that Betsy DeVos interview?
No.
Yes.
Horrifying.
Yes. It's pretty great.
It's I've only watched little clips of it because I just keep masturbating. It's like I don't know. Like
What was great about it is that like I had some argument with an old Italian guy in a deli last week, and he brought something up about Trump, and we had a little discussion. It wasn't even like an argument, and it was very interesting because this wasn't a guy I knew, but he was very kind of stereotypical, the kind of person who defends Trump, just a very simplistic alpha male type.
yeah.
And it was really interesting the way that like he wanted so badly to push his like views, and seemed like a guy who was forced about everything he believes, but when he tried to defend Trump, it was like there was this weird like just shrinking that happened where he
Right.
just kind of fell apart, because the first point he had was, well, you know, the important thing is that he hires the best people. I'm like, that's just something you used to say about Bush that you don't realize doesn't apply here, does it? Because that was what Bush kept saying. They kept saying to defend Bush's stupidity. Trump's biggest problem is that he only hires unqualified sycophants.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And Betsy DeVos is the single worst example of that, even worse than the children of him and his son-in-law being hired, because this woman really doesn't know what the fuck she's talking
The
about.
whole interview, she had the facial expression of someone who doesn't realize they've been yelling at the manager / owner the whole time. That's the energy that she
Well,
had.
she was terrified. You could see a
Yeah.
terror in her face that she did not realize she was going to be questioned about anything. This woman who had to admit in the moment she didn't know any of the basic things you would have to know to even work under her.
Right. Like the undersecretary would have given a more informative, if they even hired an
Has that position
undersecretary.
been filled?
Yeah.
Or is it just an
Yeah.
empty hallway of despair?
Yeah.
Well, she was only hired because she's same reason they hired, Scott Pruitt for the EPA. They hire people who want to destroy the
Yes.
organization they're in, and she was hired because she's a billionaire who doesn't believe in public school. So she
I
got
so
caught
wish I
in
knew
the
who
moment.
this person was and what. I have no input here.
She's a
Blonde
billionaire.
psychopath.
She's the Secretary of Education. She's a billionaire
her
who has
brother-
she's never worked in education in any way.
Her brother does.
Eric Prince.
Eric
yeah.
Prince, who is the owner
Blackwater.
of Blackwater.
All right.
Do you know
Yeah.
what?
I think I know what
The
Black
largest
I am
private
so
army
apolitical,
of
not involved.
mercenaries.
I'm like having an alien on the show who's just watching you humans. I'm not,
We'll get to hookers in a minute.
Okay.
yeah, get the hookers. I know hookers. I'm all about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she. We saw this before where she doesn't know it. She was the one who actually used a joke from The Simpsons without realizing it, where she said the reason we need to have guns in schools is in case of
Bears, yeah.
Which is why Grandpa Simpson said they should keep a gun in the house too. As a joke.
By bears, do they mean like
no?
the
Don't.
bird?
Don't.
All right,
No.
all right, all right. Because I know they hate the gays.
I know.
So
I know.
all right,
Look, it crossed all our minds, and we all vetoed it before saying.
Sorry,
it out loud.
I'm sorry. All right.
Hey, she took that chance.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Support you.
Betsy. Well, she wasn't just lying. She was bullshitting, because you could see in the moment she was just kind of saying things without thinking about them, because when she got a follow-up question, she would freak out.
Right.
She was asked about does taking money. She argued that taking money out of public schools helps public schools.
Yeah.
She said because
By making them more competitive, because they got to compete for the money. They got to compete.
Is this the Bowling
She
Green
really-
lady?
no.
No,
Okay.
that's
That's a diff-
Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah.
I wish you guys had a camera so that your listeners could see my deer in headlights. Like,
Right.
I don't
We
know.
do.
This is-
Right
You
there
sort
and
of
right there.
look like Betsy DeVos during the interview.
Oh, okay. That'd be
yeah.
a good example
That's a
of
good
this
point.
person.
But like her go-to answer for everything is we need to make schools safe for children and make an environment conducive for learning. That was her only answer for everything, and it's just
But
like
she wants to do that by systematically destroying the things that make schools okay.
Well, she was put in that position because the position of the administration is public schools are worthless.
Yes.
And we should just be getting as many kids out of it as possible.
Yeah, if you can't afford to send your child to a public school, you can't afford to live, is the system we're hoping to create.
Well, it's the same argument about why they want to take away EBT and food stamps. It's
Right.
because they think that if you, in the same way that they have Ben Carson saying he wants to make public housing as uncomfortable
Yes.
as possible, it's all the same attitude. If you give people anything for free, they'll never want anything more.
Right.
And they're extending that to education now.
Well, because money is an indicator of God's good graces. I don't know if you guys know that, but
Oh,
God,
no, I wasn't aware.
yeah, absolutely. God gives good people money. That's how God works, and punishes people for being poor. So we have to punish the poor. Otherwise, God's going to be mad. You can read all about Jesus,
and then
those
you'll
are
lose
the-
your own money,
Right,
because
yeah,
you know
because-
you're being too nice to the poor,
To poor people,
that
and
are
that's not very
godless and
Christian of
yeah,
you.
exactly.
I mean, it's why they
Yeah.
want to replace EBT with a box of food, because they're just, it's the idea
you-
that if you're going to get free food, you
you-
shouldn't enjoy it.
You guys know that we've already done that as a country, right? We did that. That's what we did with the Native American reservations. Yeah. So like all of the stuff that they're doing, they've tried on even more marginalized populations, and then it sort of like slowly expands, which is one of the reasons why I think hookers are really like the canaries in the coal mine for a lot of civil liberties. So like that was my
Nice to
effort.
bring it around.
Thank you.
That was
I
your way of trying to
that was-
segue
You guys
into it.
see me segue in transition.
Heather,
And
do you
I'll
have
get
any-
there when I want to. Thank you.
Do I have any more?
I was going to say, does Heather have something to say about prostitution? But no, we're not going to get there yet. It's only 20
I have
minutes
things
in.
about
All right.
welfare
I'm
that I
sorry.
could say.
Exactly.
you
I'm
guys
fully
run your
aware
own
of the
show.
time. So we can transition into some talk of sex work. Did you guys hear that Stormy Daniels is now offering to return the $138,000 so that she can speak freely about her relationship with Trump?
I did not. But
Set her free.
I mean,
Good.
it's obviously just a taunt.
Talking about canaries in the coal mine.
He's not going to take the money. It's a taunt, but it's a good taunt.
it's a
how
great
hilarious.
taunt.
Has she not talked about it though? Like, I'll give you back
No,
the
she
money
has
so
not.
I
She
can
has not.
keep on
All
talking
of the
about this.
all. This is so funny. Trump has so aggressively done this to himself.
Yeah.
Right, because they started negotiations for the NDA, right, and then because negotiations were taking so fucking long, because Trump thinks that he can just tell people to shut their whore
Or
mouths
he can just
whenever he
tweet
wants
it,
to,
yeah.
right? She started doing these interviews with journalists in order to get to put some fire under his butt, and so when that happened, she honored the agreement, but like she was forced into reaching out to journalists in order to get the agreement at all. So
Yeah.
it's like, so all of the stuff that exists out there is his fucking fault for not doing the shit he said he was going to fucking do. I mean,
Stormy Daniels has not publicly said, since Trump has been president, that she had an affair with him.
Not since,
She's
no.
implied it.
Right.
She's referred to interviews she did before. She has made
Just
obvious
make America horny
but
again tour.
She has not done anything that she can get sued for.
So she
for
stayed within the
NDA.
parameters of her
She
agreement.
wants to be able to publicly say it because she has pictures and video. And I mean, my assumption is that in 10 years from now, we're going to finally see the video of Trump doing an interview that he calls "If I Fucked Her." It's going to be the same
I
thing
want
OJ
to see
did.
him getting peed on by Russian chicks.
I'm
wanna
very
see that.
excited.
It's going to happen when Russia has a reason
I
to punish
also
him.
cannot wait to see how hot Pence's boyfriend is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
think that
man.
he's got like the cutest little Filipino twink you've ever seen.
Yes.
Like totally.
You know he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet him and Anderson Cooper have the same taste.
Yeah.
But the same hair, kind of, too.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I think is interesting, though, is that in the gag order, it's like there's very specific things that she can't talk about. Like she can't talk about any video, she can't talk about any photographs, but she also can't talk about anything paternal related to him.
That's sort of a thing that it's not that she has a kid. It's that's sort of a something the lawyers add just in case. But yeah, the idea that she can't talk about any paternity related things, as in the implication being that she got impregnated by him.
I
right?
thought it couldn't talk about his paternal fetish because he definitely wants to fuck his daughter. Like I thought that's what that was.
I thought that he told
she's
her
already
that
said
he
that.
fucked his daughter, and she can't talk about that.
No, that's not what it means. No, the what you're referring to is
Paternity.
the sort of just something that gets added onto any of these cheating wife, mistress
Just in case.
NDAs. They say you cannot talk about anything, including if you got an abortion of his baby or if you had an illegitimate child. We would know if she had a child around that year. So, but we may not know if she had an abortion though. So it could refer to that.
She just have this kid walking around with a little suit on.
But she did say that. Yeah, she did say that he said that she reminded him of Ivanka.
We
right.
know that he
Probably-
doesn't use condoms because he talked about the 80s and having sex as his
Was
personal
numb.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, she said he didn't use condoms. Yeah, she said he didn't use condoms. But also, I mean, I would think Trump is not going to have a mistress he has to use condoms with. That's too low class for him. He's dating a porn star for a reason because porn stars can't get STDs.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because they get
Because they
tested
prayed
brief.
the AIDS away.
Well, no one
That's
has.
how-
No one
that's
seems
how
to
it
use
worked.
condoms with porn stars. Tiger didn't use condoms
Mm-hmm.
when he had his porn with Lisa Ann.
Right.
Remember, she said she got
Right.
an abortion because
Yeah.
he wasn't using condoms and didn't ask if she was on birth control. Which, in Tiger's defense, I could see assuming that Lisa Ann was on birth control.
Yeah,
Sure.
she is like totally into being blown in. Like she's like that's her thing. She like tweets about like I love it when guys come in me. She's not on.
I mean,
I don't
who
follow her
among
Twitter.
us doesn't love
That's the best part.
a
right?
hot load of cum? I mean, like, that's all right.
You don't love a hot load of cum, Dave?
You
I notice
love
our
it.
engineer's hand is still down. Okay, putting both hands up is too much protesting.
He's expecting a cop, I guess. So I know that this is what you guys have been waiting for. So the Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act it's now. Did they put that on the floor today? Or is
SESTA,
it-
no, it was scheduled for a floor vote in the Senate on Tuesday. They've moved it. It's still possibly happening this week. Guesses are Wednesday or Friday, but it looks like they're starting to get just a little bit of heat, so they've moved it.
Here's the reason I don't think you should worry about this bill.
Okay.
I bet a lot of people in Congress have at some point in their life had sex with a prostitute, and I don't think any of those men would vote against a prostitute's best interests.
A lot of leadership historically have been fucking prostitutes.
Right,
We've
so
never
that means
prevented
they
them
like
from
them.
fucking us over.
No, that means
Ever.
doesn't that mean they like them and
No.
that they're going to help them? Because
No, a hot load of cum does not civil liberties protect.
But they've had
Oh, I
sex.
want that on a cross stitch.
But if they've had sex with these prostitutes, aren't they going to want be like, oh well, I know prostitutes, I should help them out here and not stop them from working.
So now, for people that don't know what this bill entails, why
Which
don't
is
you
most people?
So,
right?
like, why don't you break this down?
Yeah, so the House bill, FOSTA, already passed, and it was like 25 votes against and like 300 something odd for. It's a very popular bipartisan bill in Trump's America, which should terrify everyone. But the SESTA bill stands for Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act, and essentially what it does is it shifts liability from individuals to platforms when holding
Even if
them.
they don't know. That
Yes,
it's going
even
on.
even when the platforms don't know what's happening, to try to crack down on people posting ads for sex workers, and this is across the board, right? So they say that they're targeting traffic victims, and they say that they're targeting children, but they're cracking down on all adult sex workers unilaterally, pushing the whole industry further into the dark, which only makes things more dangerous and more violent
Also
for trafficking
preventing
victims
them
and
from
adults.
using sites that allow them to do
Work
background
indoors.
checks. And,
Yeah, so they're cracking down on sites that sex workers have created for themselves to try to keep themselves safe. So they're cracking down on blacklists where you can post violent clients that violate your boundaries or don't pay you or like get weird with you. You can post about that to help protect other sex workers. It prevents you from posting ads, which enables you to screen your clients and work indoors, which is sort of a big deal if you want fewer dead hookers. And it also prevents FAQs or organizing sex workers coming together. They can be prosecuted for promoting prostitution.
And the idea is to put prostitutes back on street corners.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Essentially what the goal of this is, to get them back on corners where they can be rounded up. And
Yep, absolutely. And it's scary in a lot of ways. I, as a comedian, am terrified of it from a free speech perspective, right? Because the federal government can't prevent people from posting because that's a First Amendment issue. But if you shift liability to platforms, right, how long is it going to take before Twitter, Facebook, Google, Amazon, all these private companies are like, you know what, it's just not worth the liability to let people say what they want on the internet. It's too dangerous. We can't take it. Not if we're going to get sued.
Any site that allows people to date is going to lend itself to people being able to use it for prostitution, because if you use like Tinder, you do see people that look like hookers.
Yeah, of course.
And usually they say something in it so that they'll say something like, I'm looking for a sugar daddy or whatever. I mean, that's basically code for what that is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know anytime a really good looking woman matches with me on Tinder, I automatically assume it's a hooker and I don't contact her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I mean,
You're a
it's
weird dude.
well, I mean, look, I can get some women, but not
most of them.
At a certain threshold, I'm like, there's no way that she'd have sex with me for free.
If she looks expensive, she's probably expensive.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, how do you stop women from just using dating sites? Isn't that what happened?
It seems like willfully naive thinking to think that the oldest profession can be stomped out by taking something away from the internet. Like this, obviously the oldest profession predates the fucking internet.
I mean, when they shut
down,
down,
put red lights outside of our
when
apartments
they shut down Backpage, wasn't there like?
Yes. Well,
I saw like some guy saying like all you've done is made them just move on to dating sites, and now women looking for actual dates. Are completely, drowned in.
Yeah, but a lot of those women also, like, they got displaced, right? Because they were relying on Backpage for a steady source of income. And so when they shut down Backpage and, like, in the moments where everyone's scrambling before there's an alternative, right? You're losing money there. A lot of people were, like, it just makes people more vulnerable, financially, emotionally, more vulnerable to being arrested and locked up. I mean, it's a net negative.
The people that are supporting this bill are definitely saying that this is to try to protect people that have been trafficked, and especially children that are being trafficked.
Absolutely.
And that it's trying to kind of close a loophole that victims of trafficking can now be able to sue these sites for allowing these ads to go on their sites that trafficked them.
But there are no trafficking victims that are asking for this bill. That's not where it's coming from.
Well, from like things that I've read about it, because like I had a little time to like catch up on it. It's been like some of the parents of children that had been trafficked that were murdered. One was she was, I guess, lured on the internet. She was 16 years old. I guess met this guy on some site, thought that he was like a real guy that like was interested in her, flew out to somewhere, ended up getting trafficked, and her John killed her. And so the mom has spoken to...
Wait, her pimp killed her or a client killed her?
The client killed her.
Client killed her.
Client killed her. He, I guess the pimp put the ad out on Backpage, forced her to go out on this date, and then then was killed on Christmas Eve. She was 16, and the parents are supporting this bill because their daughter was murdered. So I think that it's difficult to try to sell the idea that, well, this is going to hurt. Like,
here's how this bill is going to hurt that trafficking victim specifically, right?
Okay.
So the websites that you can post ads on, right, are theoretically available for people that are doing due diligence to if this guy has either killed prostitutes in the past. So a lot of serial killers target sex workers because they're more vulnerable and people don't report them missing. So hopefully he could end up on a blacklist that could be checked. This bill will prevent that from happening. So there's no more blacklisting available on the internet. That's a violation of this new federal law. So if this guy had made sex workers uncomfortable in the past, or if he ended up on a blacklist, that could have been a way to prevent this murder. Reference checking would be another way to prevent this murder. So theoretically, this John could call into the ad posted either by this, person or by her traffickers and say, hey, we need to check your references. Presumably serial killers that target sex workers don't have a bunch of references. This bill would make that illegal. This bill would essentially force her traffickers from like putting an ad up on the website where they at least have the option of checking for safety stuff and force them to put her out on the street where anyone driving a car.
But do you honestly think a sex trafficker is going to check safety references of a John?
No, I don't. But I think that taking that option away from adult sex workers isn't going to make a single person safer.
But also, this woman was killed because, first of all, she was seduced by a pimp who got her to move somewhere. This bill would have nothing to do with that. This wouldn't affect anything about that. She didn't meet him on a prostitution site. He just found her in the way that anyone would still be able to with freedom of speech. More importantly, though, if we lived in a world where prostitution was legal and regulated, it would prevent people underage from doing this because you would.
How is it going to prevent people underage?
In the
from
same
being
way, it was
prostitutes?
easier for me to get pot when I was in middle school than it was for me to get cigarettes, right? Because I could walk into a store and they're going to ask for my ID, but no drug dealer was ever going to ask me for my ID, right? If you have a healthy, decriminalized system, your active adult sex workers are your best eyes on the ground to find victims of violence and victims of trafficking, because we know what consensual adult sex work looks like and we know what abuse looks like.
But also,
and we can help people if we can report it. But if in reporting abuse, in reporting violence, in reporting exploitation, we're admitting to a crime and are arrested on that, then now you don't have eyes on the ground anymore. So all this bill does, it's sort of like the migration stuff, right? So what you realize that when you crack down on borders, you don't stop migrants. You just make the smugglers more and more violent by taking out the first layer of people that would just want to help people. Remember, smugglers could just be a dude with a boat or a van. Like, that's, you look hungry and scared, you're trying to go there? Cool, let me help you. That could be a smuggler. Yeah. Now you crack down and there's all kinds of violence and all kinds of police force and all kinds of stuff. Now you're paying somebody $25,000 to get you from point A to point B. You're in debt slavery to them for the rest of your life. That's when the violence and the smuggling, that's when shit gets bad. So this SEPTA bill isn't going to prevent a single instance of sex trafficking. It's just going to make it harder for adult sex workers.
It's lazy scapegoating.
It's very lazy scapegoating.
But also think of it this way: if we lived in a country where all adult sex workers had to be regulated, the way that like as England, right? Where they have to be tested.
Let's look at Nevada.
Sure.
Nevada's
Nevada,
probably
of course.
a better
We have it
example.
in this country where you have to be tested and you have to be an adult.
You
If
also have
that
to
was the
register at
case,
the sheriff's office, work
right.
12-hour shifts, and give half your money to the house. But, it's not perfect.
If that was the case, then the only people who would have to do it on the black market illegally are the ones who were either underage or like HIV positive. And if you knew
illegal.
those were the only people doing
people
it
with
on
a
the
criminal
street,
record.
then you would know who's on the street. It'd be a lot easier.
Here illegally.
It'd be so much easier to know who shouldn't be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So of course you would cut down on child prostitution, because child prostitutes wouldn't just be mixed in with the women on the street who now can't use any of the things you referred to on the internet.
Right. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I was going to bars when I was 15. It wasn't like it was illegal. Like it
was illegal.
But that's what I'm saying is that like the fact that it was illegal didn't stop the fact that like we were going to bars when we were 15. So making I kind of feel like this is the same argument as that children in schools will be safer if teachers had guns. Because if you give the teacher a gun, then they're going to be able to stop an active
Those
shooter.
damn kids from yelling.
It's exactly. But like I think that, like, from what I've been reading about this bill is that they seem to be saying that they're going to be more focused on trafficked individuals.
Well, like,
That's
take Operation
complete
Cross Country,
bullshit.
right? So Operation Cross Country is a federal holiday, basically, Jubilee, where they put like a bunch of federal resources into local police departments to round up trafficking victims. And every year they self-report the number of adult sex workers that they caught, the number of underage escorts that they caught, and the number of pimps that they caught. They make this they make this information available. And it is always, even in the best case scenario, like 80% adult sex trafficking in like single digits underage girls. Now, I personally started doing sex work when I was 17.
Whoa. What?
What?
Which part of that is the whoa? I don't
Back up. Tell us the story. I'm saying the audience doesn't know. I'm just
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks. Weirdo. I started doing sex work when I was 17, which means that if I was rounded up by cross country, I would be put in as a sex trafficking victim. But I didn't have a pimp. I just had access to like the internet and not enough obstacles in my way. So like I put up my own ad and I like arranged my own dates. So there was nobody in control or like coercing me at all. So I like it's a weird, like, who they label as a traffic victim is weird and fucked up. And even based on those weird and fucked up metrics, they're mostly getting consensual adult sex workers and putting them in cages in this weird looking for this perfect victim that doesn't exist. I mean, like, for example, there was a woman a couple of months ago who was charged with trafficking herself. There was a sting in Seattle where women were arrested for trafficking each other because they worked together and tried to like provide background checks for each other and like shared
kids
a space.
Charged with distributing
child pornography because they have
pornography.
images of their
Yeah.
own dick on their phone. Like,
Yeah.
it's like this. What they say they're doing is really distant from what they're actually fucking doing.
From like your, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, like what you're kind of saying is that you don't, or this is what I'm gathering, is that you don't believe that child trafficking is a problem.
I believe that it exists. It is not as much of a problem as the propaganda would let you to believe. I don't think that there are women that are being kidnapped off the street and violently forced into sex trafficking to the tune of hundreds and thousands of lost girls every year. That's not happening.
So now, if child trafficking is not a problem, or child pornography is not a problem, then why do we have so many people that are even, celebrities? We had that guy from that I can't even remember the name of that show anymore. He just killed himself because he was caught with child porn. It's like, what was that?
Glee.
Yeah.
The guy from Glee who had child porn.
We had
Yeah, and
Jared.
He was also accused of rape, also of women.
Right.
Yeah, Jared Foe. No, it's not that child. It's not that child abuse isn't a problem, but when you're using the argument, child porn is a problem, and that's why we need to stop all porn. It's a bullshit argument.
Yeah.
And this is the exact
But
same
are
thing
they
as
saying
that.
that they're stopping porn, or are they saying that they're trying to prevent people from being trafficked on the internet?
No, they're
because
trying to eradicate.
They're not saying that porn sites are going to be taken down. Like, if you're actually watching video of porn, they're saying that they're trying to hold websites accountable that are allowing ads to happen that people can be trafficked on.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
but
not trying
didn't
to
they
eradicate porn. They're trying to eradicate prostitution.
Didn't they shut down Backpage from having prostitution because they made sure the women were over 18?
Yes.
And they said that by making sure the women were over 18, that proves you're culpable and you know what they're doing?
Yeah, so what happens in that case is, like, Backpage got shut down, and what Backpage was doing was Backpage was asking for people that were trying to post ads to prove their identity, so that you'd fax like a copy of your driver's license just to Backpage so that they could verify that you were overage. Huge problem once Backpage got seized and searched. So now there are all of these adult sex workers whose identifying information is now in the headquarters of somewhere with Backpage. Whether or not that's protected is still a big mystery to the adult sex workers I know who used to advertise on there.
Previous to this bill,
Yeah.
Backpage wouldn't be held responsible
Well, they
for
were
the ads.
well, they were shut down and before this bill, and
But
they're
not
being
charged with anything.
I'm not 100% up to date on that. I know
I
like a
believe
lot
it
of people
was
got
that they would only
questioned.
been responsible for specific acts, and now
Right.
it's just having the site itself is enough to be shut
Right.
down.
Yes, absolutely.
Like
And
if they hadn't found anyone a child on the site, they wouldn't have been able to do
I think
anything.
they found
and now it doesn't
3
matter.
people underage in like a decade of searching through records. But now there are lots of other websites that are available that have servers in foreign countries where the U.S. doesn't have jurisdiction, and they're not doing any age checking.
Yeah.
So thank God we cracked down on the problem of Backpage trying to do due diligence, and they smacked that down. And what happened? It popped up somewhere else with fewer regulations where there's actually more opportunity for exploitation than what was happening here.
It's important to remember that we're not saying that we want there to be child prostitution not be
No.
cracked down on. But the thing is, it's just like when Jeff Sessions says we need to stop marijuana because of the opium epidemic.
Yeah.
It's a lie to get to the villain you want to get because you know the American people aren't really behind it.
Well, also
Right.
actually doing things that would actually crack down on actual child prostitution would be helpful rather than
Yeah. If you want to
know.
crack down on slavery and exploitation in the U.S., I think the place to look where that's really happening is domestic labor. That's where, like, you have children who are functioning as basically slaves in people's homes. You have, like, there's an exploitation and trafficking problem in this country and globally, but it doesn't look like sex trafficking. It looks like labor trafficking. You look at migrant farm workers. You look at domestic laborers. You look at people that work in nail salons. I mean, there's trafficking here, but it doesn't necessarily look like this story that we've been sold.
Because there's nothing in the Ten Commandments about slavery. It's not. No, I'm not joking. I'm saying
I
there's
know.
There is
There's just so many
nothing-
other instances
slavery.
if you're going to bring up Bible. You
I'm
know?
saying slavery is not really something that is taught as being bad in mainstream religion, but sex is specifically, non-married sex. So it's not a sexy issue in that way to go after domestic,
Underpaid,
Yeah.
overworked. Yeah.
people who are essentially treated like slaves because they're brought here with the promise of work that they don't really get. We've seen that many times. We've
Yep.
seen the epidemic of like Nigerian immigrants who are used as slave labor inside countries that do not have slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, that's a problem in New Jersey, and a lot of like the hair braiding salons in New Jersey. That the hair braiders are actually like enslaved people, but it still doesn't really change the fact that like even in airports that you have regular, I guess, airline workers that are checking people in that are supposed to be on the lookout for trafficked children.
Yeah, do you know what happened a couple of months ago? We actually covered this on the Oldest Profession podcast. There were 2 women who were trying to fly home for Thanksgiving, and they were wearing short skirts. And so I think it was United Airlines that has invested over $1 million in training their employees on how to spot trafficking victims, held them and detained them for over 12 hours. So they missed dinner because they were convinced that they were trafficking victims. And you see this historically over and over and over again in countries that try to crack down on prostitution. It ends up just limiting the freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and like fashion choices of women generally, because they end up self-censoring so as not to be confused with whores who are being violently cracked down on and thrown in cages. We saw this with the Contagious Diseases Act in the 1860s in England. We saw the same thing happening during the American theater of World War I. We saw this in the prelude to the Third Reich in Weimar, Germany. We see this like over and over and over again of like states saying ostensibly they want to crack down on the victims of prostitution, and what they're really doing is cracking down on women being out in public or having opinions.
by the
It's
way,
crazy.
don't forget the 2 women who were mistakenly accused of being prostitutes. Do you happen to remember what ethnicity they
Asian, definitely Asian,
were? Yeah,
Yeah.
because
of stereotyping.
Because the stereotype that an Asian woman who's dressed this way must be a prostitute to whoever was working there. So
yep,
we're
they are just coming back from vacay.
But there's also been cases where they have legitimately stopped kids from flying places that they would have been trafficked.
Has there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Where?
I'm not saying we should stop that either. I'm not saying we should
Why
stop
wasn't that on
trying
the
to stop
evening
that.
news?
Well, because it doesn't.
That's where I
Right.
saw it.
Okay.
I just
there's
think that
also
it's
cases-
really a hard, for me, it's a hard sell to say that making legitimate sex workers' lives more inconvenient is worth making children's lives safer.
But we're not talking about actually making children's lives safer. We're talking about the illusion of safety that comes with more rules and restrictions.
Yeah, if
and
that guy couldn't advertise on in Backpage or whatever,
he'd have her at a street
then
corner.
he'd have her in the
gunpoint.
back of a car, or just
like
drive her around handing her off to people. Like,
prostitution existed before the internet and will continue after it, but we're
You
not
sure?
talking about inconveniencing sex workers. We're talking about sex workers' lives at risk. We're talking about women being murdered. We're talking about more traffic. Like, this doesn't make the problem better. It makes the problem worse. So if you want to prevent people from being killed in sex work, you want to prevent children from being trafficked, it's about rising like adult sex workers so that they have the tools to keep themselves safe, not making it less safe for everyone for the veneer of cracking. Like, you don't get what you're aiming for with this bill, and what you do get is much, much worse.
It seems like the point of the bill is to use the child victims as an excuse to crack down on all of them, because prostitution is just something that, particularly if you're conservative, is just wrong on an intrinsic moral level in a way that a lot of other crimes aren't, because they're not like biblical kind of crimes.
We've seen prohibition go wrong before, and we keep having to relearn this lesson.
Yeah.
That just because you outlaw something doesn't make it go away.
But this isn't really a prohibition. This is already something that's illegal in most parts of our country. This is from reading the bill or reading about the bill. It seems like it's really just supposed to be targeting people that are trafficked and allowing them to make culpable the sites that allowed this to happen.
This is about criminal prosecution and not litigation. So, like, I mean, this opens
It
up
opens up litigation, which had been previously closed.
but
so
it also opens up criminal prosecution
for people that are allegedly involved in the trafficking.
Yeah, except that the way that the government has defined trafficking is so broad that it ends up like including a bunch of adult sex workers.
I think there's a schism here. Of the question is, it sounds like there's two different, that both of you have a different idea of what the end result is going to be when an adult who's doing this of her own accord gets caught in this.
But we've already seen that.
Which is that they're not letting those ones go.
Yeah, they're definitely.
This is
not a catch and release.
This is a net. This
Yeah.
is a net they're trying to get all sex workers in, right? And they're not, like, it's just sort of saying it's worth it to get all of them to get the kids too, which is a valid argument. But
I mean, it's already illegal. So, I mean, I don't really understand. Like, I don't think that it, like, no offense, but if there's like 5 kids that are going to be saved from this bill, and like thousands of sex workers are inconvenienced by it, I'm sorry, it was already illegal to begin with. But I think that if those 5 kids, if their parents can go back to a Backpage or go back to a Craigslist and say, something, you allowed this to happen to my child, and I'm going to hold you accountable for it to the fullest extent of the law, and they can, have a civil suit against them and try to protect another 5 kids, I'm totally fine with that.
Wait.
I mean, you could really just move to a place that it's legal.
Well, here's a question. If you live in a community where, because of these laws, they've managed to shut down the online aspect of prostitution, and we go back to street walking, wouldn't that make it a lot harder for anyone to find a kidnapped and trafficked prostitute?
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a family member who was, the idea that that these ads are online seems like that would be incredibly helpful. I mean, I don't know if you saw that George C. Scott movie. I think it was called Hardcore.
I missed that one.
About a girl who gets kidnapped in camp and forced into prostitution, and then he finds her by going and basically watching every porno movie that existed at the time until he found the one she was in. That movie would have been 10 minutes. Now, that guy could have just scrolled through every single ad much faster than the guy had to go from theater to
use
theater.
some facial recognition software.
A lot of tools at the disposal of the
I mean, look,
surveillance state
I
now.
get the argument because this is a half measure. My real belief is that prostitution, along with all crimes that would be considered prohibition, should be legal and regulated. Because every time I hear about a pimp killing a woman, I think if prostitution was legal and done in an antiseptic environment, there would be no pimps.
I don't know. I was a waitress, which is totally legal. I've had a bunch of abusive managers.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't have, been violent with them, but at least it was an option. But I guess that's what I'm saying is I think that all crimes that don't involve a complainant it doesn't make sense to be illegal because it's just how you end up with PCP and weed or children mixed into streetwalkers or I'm sorry, are there any other victimless crimes I'm not thinking of?
Tattooing.
Drugs.
What we used to crack down on. Yeah, drugs, drinking.
Well, things that are illegal right now that don't have someone to complain when the crime happens. That's why it's so hard to catch someone doing when two people are in on it, like a prostitution or a drug deal.
Victimless crimes.
I guess in my head right now, I thought there'd be a third one.
It feels like there should be a third
probably
one.
is, but
Everything
like I mean,
happens in threes.
and I agree that like I think that prostitution should be legal, and I do think that it should be regulated and highly taxed. I think it should have like a luxury tax. The same as with drugs, but like at the same time, like I'm not against this bill, and I kind of feel like, you know, like basically it's just making something that's illegal inconvenient. And I kind of feel the same way about this as I do about the whole, like, now people that are on opioids or they have a disease. Back in the 80s and the 90s in the inner cities, if you were on crack cocaine, you were a criminal. Now, if you're on heroin and you live in the Midwest, now you have a disease. It's
which
to
is
me,
good.
It's the same thing. It's like I think that it's really tilted on who they think or they're capturing, and so
there's things that I like and I don't like it's both at once scary, and I kind of like the idea of the retroactive going after sites for posting things, but in the concept of a parent who was like, now I'm going after your ass, and I kind of like that idea, but retroactive going after people before a bill was even passed into a law creeps me out because that just shouldn't happen. Like, you know, you shouldn't be able to just go and say, now this law exists and I'm going to go after everybody.
Right. Well, constitutionally, it's supposed to be you cannot be prosecuted for a crime you committed before that was a crime.
Yeah.
Though,
so I'm at odds with it.
It gets weird.
But yeah.
Can I say something a little unpopular, possibly? I don't know
Sure.
if it will be. I don't believe that inconvenience should always be less important than lives, because on some level, if you lowered all the speed limits, more people would live, and I don't think that would be worth it. I at some level, I'm like, if a certain number of people are late, I would accept an acceptable amount of death.
I mean, I kind of feel like the same way about like my tax money going to Narcan and like Arkansas.
What's your problem with Narcan?
I don't know.
Why am I
Narcan is.
paying for people to like? Why is my tax money going to Narcan to save people that voted for Trump?
I don't know what Narcan is.
Narcan is a very safe and cheap drug that's very easy to administer that can help people not die when they've overdosed.
So is it a drug that gets people? Is it a drug to help people get off drugs?
No, it's just if they
a drug
OD,
to
it
save
it
people's
revives
lives.
them.
Yes. So if your heart stops because you did too much heroin and your heroin buddy recognizes the symptoms of that because they're around heroin a bunch, they can administer Narcan and you will live and not die.
And it's not necessarily inexpensive because there are a lot of municipalities that are going bankrupt because there's so many people that need Narcan. And to be honest with you, at that point, it's Darwinism. If you're
I was
in
just going to say, it
Arkansas-
kind of ruins the whole Darwin thing.
Yeah, if you're in Arkansas and you voted for Trump and you OD'd, bye. Like, I just feel that way.
Well, while I do agree,
I don't think we should be killing people based on their political preferences because that gets turned around
kill
real fucking
themselves.
fast. No, but like Trump would definitely love to withhold medical care from
Isn't
anyone.
he doing that already?
yeah.
No, but from anyone on Medicaid that voted for Hillary. Like
I'm
this is
sure
just
he's
a-
working on it.
Right, exactly. Like, do you not see the moral equivalency there?
No, I find that, again,
Or is it
going
just
back
straight
to
up team psychology?
I don't think we should be assuming that it's only Trump supporters dying of heroin overdoses. Though I
No, it's
agree,
definitely
I
a lot of
don't know if
non-voters.
any of those. Yeah,
I
just gonna-
do
none of
agree
them
that-
voted. Probably.
I do agree that being on heroin probably made him more attractive to you, just because you
Reasonable.
had less, diminished. You have more of a diminished
I
capacity.
was kind of more speaking to the fact of the whole kind of thing with being inconvenienced not being greater than
I want to push back
saving
on this
lives.
inconvenience thing because, like, we are definitely talking about a future with more dead hookers instead of fewer if this bill gets passed because you are taking the knees out from all of the ways that adult sex workers
But I
are
mean, it's
trying
the oldest
to keep
profession.
themselves
We've always
safe.
had dead hookers. It's not like I don't think that the percentage of dead hookers is going to increase throughout the span of time. There's always been dead hookers. I mean, we just got.
Well, there's also been always dead people, but there have actually been a lot of examples of societies that have not stigmatized sex work where you have fewer of them being murdered by police officers, Johns, or managers.
Hookers are known for being at the vanguard of the defense against serial killers. Hookers are always the ones that serial killers go after for the exact reason that they have to work outside the law.
Like there was that woman in West Virginia that killed that serial killer that was regaled as a hero, and thank God she wasn't arrested.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
They also leave a nice, like the serial killers who have to have like a moral thing behind their killing.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
they're saving the prostitutes for God, and they have a reason.
Yeah, prostitutes have two enemies historically: violent misogynists in the form of police officers and also violent clients and like people that seek to violently control them, whether it's pimps or johns or police, and do-gooders. And this bill combines the worst impulses of both of them. It combines the Republican conservatives' instinct to punish hoary, slutty women for the dirty, filthy,
But aren't those the
God-fearing
enemies
sex.
of all women, though?
Yeah, and it also combines the liberal instinct to help a population of people they can't be bothered to understand. That's what this bill is, and it's going to do neither.
Right, but I feel like all women's enemies are typically your conservative male and
violent misogynists and do-gooders.
also your do-gooders. So I mean, again,
Both those kinds of people are usually afraid of me, so I don't.
They're also the
Too many
enemies of
encounters.
artists and intellectuals and comedians and like any fringe people, right? We should all be against this bill because it feels like chipping away at freedom of speech. It feels like chipping away at like what is allowed.
but what am
So
I
you're
not
talking
allowed
about, like,
to
the-
say because someone can't post an ad on Backpage?
Hey, I have this helpful FAQ blog. If you are a new sex worker, you should read my blog on.
But that's not
steps that-
something I'm not going to be able to say. Like I can
I
can
think-
still
I think
say
that-
whatever I want.
I don't like rape jokes, but I'm not comfortable with them being outlawed on the internet.
I think that we're talking about like a possible end game, like if websites are being held liable for other people's.
What else can they be held liable for?
then
I'm
they
hearing.
might bolster up their
Their, calls on the left to punish
their
racists.
censorship. Yeah,
And I'm hearing
so-
calls on the right to punish people that think Trump is stupid. Like anyone can use this bill or can use this idea to hold
But if you
platforms
can't
liable.
say all men are scum on Facebook, so now
There's an example of that.
Exactly. But, so, and I understand that as being censorship,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, like, okay, saying not being able to post a sex working ad and not being able to say all men are scum to me are not equal.
We're not
I
allowed
think they're
to say all
false
men are
equivalents.
scum on Facebook.
Yes, no
not.
one ever gets happiness from saying all men are scum.
Right. Yeah. So the Facebook as outlaw or has been kicking people off their private platform for saying all men are scum because it violates their policy, right? Their corporate policy.
Hate speech.
Hate
They're
speech,
trying
right?
to-
But they won't crack down on people doing violent, specific rape threats because that apparently is not a violation of their policy.
Are you
But
sure?
again,
Are you
I've
sure
been
that's
on a
not violation
crusade
of policy?
against all
Wait.
white people.
Right.
posts.
Wait. Are we sure
Lately,
it's not a violation of policy to threaten to rape someone on Facebook?
people are not
Are you
getting
100%
people
sure?
are not
Protected.
getting kicked off.
Is that
I'm
real?
looking at screenshots
No, so like if
and the
you
reporting.
say that you're going to rape all women, that would be a violation of policy. But if you're going
That
to
would
say
be
that
I'm
you're
gonna rape you.
I'm going to rape you, that's not because you're not a protected person.
Are you sure? Wait.
Yes.
So if someone saw that and reported it, they
Yes.
would say we are allowed. That's
Yes,
real.
yes, that's
Yes.
a real
Yeah,
thing
no,
that
that's-
actually
Sure of this?
happened. I'm positive.
Yeah.
You can
Marcia
say I'm-
yeah,
Bel-
Wait,
Bel-
wait.
I'm in
not
agreement with this.
I am not on the side of being able to say that or anything. I'm just saying, like, we're 100% sure that you're allowed. You will not get suspended
no.
for 24 hours.
No, if
from
you say-
Facebook.
But if you said like rape, like like all women should be raped, then I believe that you're going to be kicked off. But if you say specifically you're going to rape a specific woman, that particular woman is not a protected class.
Okay, let me. Okay,
That's interesting.
with all due respect, would it be a? Okay.
I'd send you the article, but I don't have it.
I kind of want to write that right now on one of your Facebooks just to see what happens.
Go
but
for
I don't
it.
want
Do it
people.
on yours.
I feel like it could come back to haunt me.
I don't think so.
I feel like someone might see this in the wrong
I consent to you threatening
context.
to rape me on Facebook.
Absolutely.
There. Now you're
Me too.
protected.
Go ahead.
I still feel like this isn't going to work out for me.
You know what? I don't know what to tell you, Dave. But I'm telling you that's like so. The difference between a federal policy.
Could you threaten to rape me on Facebook right now? Would that work? Because I feel like that's going to hurt your career less.
I don't know, but sure.
We'll do
Let's
that.
find out. Yeah, we'll run an experiment
do that on
after
the
the
break.
show.
Yeah, when we
That's-
have a break, then
all 3
we'll
of you. I want
threaten
you
to-
all to threaten to rape me on Facebook right now, and I'm going to report it.
Sure.
And I want to see what happens. Okay. Oh, we just did? Oh, okay, great. Right. Oh, yeah,
Hashtag
Matt
me
too.
too.
All 4 of you. I want everyone here to.
I don't know that I'm agreeing to potentially rape Dave, but
No, I just want the threat.
I'm,
Oh no, I I'm sorry. I just wanted you to threaten to. I didn't mean
no.
to do it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I
We'll give
don't
you
know
a
that I'm
safe
doing
word,
that
Dave.
either.
That seems like such an oversight of their
No,
policy.
because their policy they have like a hierarchy of protected classes. So a specific individual is not a protected class. Just like you can say something like about a black child, but if you say something about all of something, then that is more protected than black child, black women, white women. Like you've got to say something about an entire group of people.
So if I said several men are scum, they'd let that fly.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I tried it that way. So I said test like I think all men are scum. Saying think, I didn't get kicked off. I also said I think all of the Facebook policy whatever people are scum. I didn't get kicked off for that. But if you say all men are scum, then you get kicked off because the people that work for Facebook aren't a protected class. Me thinking that all men are scum, it's like kind of because I like to play games with the censors, and so like that didn't get me kicked off. But like if you say all of something, that will get you kicked off. I can't remember what I
tried
said
that with
all
the,
of, and
the
I
art,
got
nudity and art thing.
right.
Because Leonard Nimoy did those photographs of the obese naked women.
Okay.
That's art.
Yep.
But I got suspended for a week.
You're not fat enough.
They were actually preemptively, like it was disappearing as I posted it.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Because
Yeah, I posted
the
it,
image
like-
was the image had
They already
been
have
taken.
it on file. Like Leonard Nimoy's fat chicks not allowed on Facebook.
Is it all nudity is not allowed?
I think that it's okay if it's in a painting, but these are photographs, so
Well, I mean if that's the policy, if you just can't post nudes, I get it. If
I mean,
that's-
I don't know. I posted nudes
I'm
for
not
the
saying they
Naked
shouldn't.
Show.
Oh,
but-
while I was suspended.
On the other
David
side, you could be
posted
Twitter,
a-
and you could just happen to see people getting gaped on your feed without expecting it. So there's definitely
while
a
I
medium
was
here.
suspended, my husband posted a picture that he took of one of our models, but she was black, so you couldn't like really tell that her nipples were showing because her
That's fair.
skin was all like the same color.
so
'Cause of the
the
lighting.
And it
algorithm
was
didn't
just they
catch
did
it.
not. Yeah, it was
So
just
the
right
lights-
up.
Speaking of
nude
racism
girl.
in
Silhouetted.
algorithms, did you guys hear about the new iPhone that can't tell different Asian faces apart?
Oh,
so like
no.
the facial
Recognition
recognition
doesn't
unlocked
work,
just
yeah.
works with Asian people. Like,
Oh no!
I thought that was fantastic.
Well, look, I mean, it's not. I'm not going to say that that's racist because we know who's making the phones. So I think it's a little presumptuous to say that they're going out of their way to.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones making the phones.
Maybe
if anyone,
they really do look the same. No, sorry.
it means they agree. Obviously, you know, it's funny. I keep getting reminded of this. Well, it's a movie about sex trafficking. It was one of those Death Wishes, one of the Charles Bronson movies. There was one about it was one about sex trafficking, and I remember just the most offensive part of the movie was so a white girl got touched on the subway by a Japanese man. It was like that 80s thing where like we were just obsessed with Japanese culture and trying to find ways to attack them. So there was a thing where like you know that old stereotype that like women on the subway in Japan won't stop a man from touching her because she's embarrassed. So it was an 80s thing. So
okay.
in the
I didn't even
movie,
know.
this young girl gets touched by a Japanese businessman who wants to see if it works on American women, and of course it doesn't, and she gets mad and goes to the police. And then she says to an Asian policeman, he goes, what happened? She looks a little nervous, and the Asian policeman, who looked nothing like the guy who touched her, Like not even this guy was bald and fat. The other guy was like young with hair in a suit. And the guy says, "It's okay. I know we all look alike."
Oh my God.
And I was like, who the
Some
Number
writer.
One, Charles
What director
freaking
had
Bronson
the
is
balls?
Asian. Charles Bronson is Asian.
Can you
sell out?
Can you even imagine? Like, who would have the balls
To write
right,
that?
to write that, and then to ask at least the writer doesn't have to look that actor in the eye and say, "Now this is your line."
But if you saw how much these two Asian guys, it looked
my God.
it honestly looks like a 25-year-old Japanese guy and a 50-year-old Filipino, and he's just like. And he's like,
Was it maybe part of the joke? Was
I
it
look
a
in the
joke?
no, it was not.
It was totally serious.
It was I look in the mirror and I see Viet Cong. It was the guy.
Hilarious.
It was such an insulting. I mean, it was the 80s. What do you want to do?
Right.
But I mean, it just makes me think of that. And this was a movie all about sex trafficking, about a girl who got kidnapped and then killed herself because she got. Which you know, like I said, at least that movie had the decency for him to specifically go after the people trafficking kids.
right.
Well, yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, wait. Can I just one last thing about how offensive this movie was and how written by someone who was not Asian this movie had to be? In the movie, the Japanese guy who touched the girl, he's like one of the main characters. Mm-hmm. It was like him. It was sort of like his like evil side coming out, and then he went back to being a normal person. He has sex with his wife, and they're both from Japan.
Right.
So they're having, as you can see from the movie, traditional Japanese
Do they wear
sex.
kimonos and
God.
have like tea first?
You're
what is this?
you're getting ahead of me.
Okay, go on.
Not only were they wearing kimonos and dressing like, you know, like I would imagine for like a traditional
Like the Karate
wedding or
Kid
something.
tea ceremony.
The
thing.
way they had sex in this movie in the 80s about Japanese people living in America is that they have sex by getting, putting on like, this very ceremonial looking garb. And then the man,
Abused wives with geishas.
the woman lies down. The man got on top of her, and then they simply press against each other, like with him inside her. He presses against her as hard as he can with not one thrust. They simply hold hands and just grip each other and
So beautiful.
grind, press against each other like some sort of hydraulic press until he comes. Not one
Isometric
stroke.
sex.
So they invented this fucking fabricated, otherworldly sex that these people must be having.
Dave, that's just
I
science.
thought
Japanese
that's the
people,
sword and the chrysanthemum.
they have sex like birds
It was fucking crazy.
with their,
This movie, I gotta find out what movie this was now because
That was called the lotus flower.
We gotta watch
Apparently,
this.
you don't have sex with enough Japanese people.
that's funny.
I
All right,
I was like, and I was at an age when I saw this where I was, of course, going to assume this is accurate. I was like 9 years old.
You were going to disappoint a lot of Japanese girls.
Yeah, it's a good thing I didn't have sex for another 11 years because I could have made a big mistake.
Thank God you paid them.
All right, you guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.